0647 on June 6, 1944, Commander Samuel Dealey stood in the cramped conning tower of USS Harder, watching 3 Japanese destroyers cut through the moonlit waters off Tawi Tawi, tracking his submarine with deadly precision. 37 years old, 5 war patrols completed, 18 enemy ships already destroyed. For 3 weeks, this one submarine had been tearing through Japanese supply lines like a ghost beneath the ocean. Now the Imperial Japanese Navy had decided enough was enough. They sent 3 destroyers, Mizuki Hayanami Tanegazifas, heavily armed, built for one purpose: kill submarines. Until April 1944, American submarines avoided destroyers at all costs. The math was simple: a destroyer could move at 35 knots. A submerged submarine struggled to reach 9. If detected, survival depended on one thing: running away and staying silent. Between December 1941 and March 1944, Japanese destroyers had sunk 14 American submarines. American submarines had sunk 0 destroyers in direct combat. That wasn't just a statistic, it was doctrine. If a destroyer found you, you ran. Commander Dealey didn't believe in that doctrine anymore, because on April 13th, everything changed. Destroyer Ikazuchi charged Harder at full speed, its bow cutting through the water like a blade. Every officer expected the same response: dive, evade, survive. They gave a different order: flank, speed ahead, straight at the destroyer, no hesitation, no second guess. At 900 yards, Harder fired 4 torpedoes in a spread. Seconds later, 2 hits. Direct images. The explosion tore Ikazuchi apart. Fire and steel erupted into the air as the destroyer began to break. 5 minutes later, she was gone. Day's report was just one line: expended 4 torpedoes and 1 destroyer. Simple, cold, final. But in the Pacific Fleet, it spread like wildfire. A submarine had attacked a destroyer head-on and won. The Japanese didn't ignore it. Admiral Somu Toyota, commander-in-chief of the combined fleet, saw the danger immediately. Between January and May 1944, Japan had already lost 23 destroyers. They couldn't afford more losses, not now, not with Operation Ago approaching. The plan was massive: destroy the American invasion fleet near the Philippines in one decisive battle. Everything depended on coordination. Carriers, battleships, destroyers. Each piece had a role. Remove one, and the system started to crack. By late May, Toyota concentrated his forces at Tawi Tawi. 4 battleships, including Yamato, 9 aircraft carriers, 15 cruisers, 28 destroyers. It was the largest Japanese naval buildup since Midway. And hidden beneath those waters was USS Harder. American codebreakers had already intercepted signals. They knew something big was coming. Admiral Charles Lockwood didn't hesitate. He sent Harder directly into the area. Mission: patrol, observe, and attack anything that moved. For 9 days, Harder stayed invisible. No contact, no detection, just waiting. Then June 6, all 300 hours, a Japanese patrol plane spotted something unusual. A thin line cutting across the water, periscope wake. Within minutes, 3 destroyers were dispatched. Their orders were clear: find the submarine, destroy it, no escape. Back inside Harder's conning tower, tension was rising fast. Commander Dealey raised the periscope slowly. He saw them immediately. 3 destroyers moving in formation. The lead ship, Minazuki, was closing fast, zigzagging, experienced. Behind her, 2 more destroyers spread out, forming a wide arc. They weren't chasing blindly, they were hunting, boxing Harder into a kill zone every second that passed. The trap tightened. Most submarine captains would have gone deep immediately, cut engines, disappear, hope the ocean swallowed them. They did the opposite. He turned the submarine directly toward threat. Range, 1,100 yards. Closing fast. Inside the conning tower, no one needed an explanation. They all knew what was coming down the throat. The most dangerous move a submarine could make: fire torpedoes directly at an attacking destroyer, then dive under it at the last second. If the torpedoes missed, depth charges would fall exactly where you were. If your timing was off, you'd be crushed or rammed. There was no margin for error. At 800 yards silence, at 750 yards fire. 3 torpedoes shot forward, cutting through the water toward Minazuki's bow. Take her down 300 feet. Harder angled sharply downward. The hull groaned as pressure increased. Inside, the crew held on, waiting, counting. Seconds stretched into eternity. 20 seconds, 30. Then 2 violent explosions shattered the silence. The shockwave slammed into Harder like a hammer. Lights burst, metal rattled. A 3rd explosion followed, stronger than the first 2. The submarine's stern lifted, then crashed back down. Then nothing, no sound, no movement, just silence. Dealey slowly raised the periscope, looked, and saw no destruction, only burning debris scattered across the surface, and a dark oil slick spreading across the water. Minazuki was gone, split apart, sunk in seconds. But victory didn't mean safety. The remaining 2 destroyers reacted instantly. They accelerated, turning sharply toward the last known position. Depth charges rolled off their decks. Moments later, the ocean erupted. Explosions thundered above Harder, sending pressure waves crashing through the water. The submarine shook violently. Dust and insulation fell from the ceiling, but Dealey didn't panic. He kept Harder moving slowly, quietly, slipping deeper into darkness. Above them, the destroyers searched blindly, dropping explosives in patterns, trying to predict where the submarine would be. But they were already too late. The attack had worked again. 1 destroyer destroyed, 2 more hunting, and 1 submarine, still alive, waiting. The shockwaves from the depth charges faded slowly into the darkness. Inside USS Harder, no one spoke. Men gripped valves, gauges, and steel handles, waiting for the next explosion. But it didn't come. Commander Day held the submarine at depth, moving just enough to stay unpredictable. Above them, the two remaining destroyers continued their search patterns, fast, aggressive, but now uncertain. Because something had changed. The submarine hadn't run, it had attacked and destroyed one of them. That hesitation, that moment of doubt, was exactly what Day was counting on. After nearly an hour, the destroyers began to widen their search. Their patterns became less precise. The kill zone had broken. Day didn't chase them, not yet. He stayed patient, silent, waiting for the next opportunity. At 0900 hours, news of the sinking reached Japanese command. Admiral Toyota was furious. One submarine, operating alone, had now destroyed another destroyer in direct company. He issued immediate orders. More ships, more aircraft, continuous patrols. This was no longer a routine hunt, this was personal. By midday, 6 additional destroyers had been assigned to the area. Patrol planes began sweeping overhead every 20 minutes. The ocean around Tawi Tawi had turned into a trap, but Day wasn't trying to escape. He was hunting. June 7, 0230 hours. Harder surfaced under the cover of darkness to recharge batteries. The sky was pitch black, no moon, heavy cloud cover, perfect conditions. Diesel engines roared to life as the submarine cut across the surface at high speed. Then radar contact. Single ship, bearing 095, range 8,000 yards, closing fast. Speed approximately 28 knots. A destroyer alone. Commander Day made his decision instantly. Attack, but not submerged. Surface attack, the most dangerous kind. He pushed Harder's engines to flight speed, 21 knots. The submarine surged forward across the water, closing the distance deliberately. Inside the control room, tension returned. This time, there would be no protection of depth. If spotted early, they would be shredded by gunfire. At 4,000 yards, still no reaction from the target. At 3,500, nothing. At 3,000 yards, finally, the Japanese destroyer's radar operator detected something, a small, fast-moving contact, probably another destroyer returning to base. That assumption would cost them everything. The ship was Hanami. Her captain, Commander Hideo Kuboki, had been searching for submarines for hours, exhausted, expecting nothing. At 2,500 yards, something felt wrong. At 2,300, Kuboki realized the truth. Not a destroyer, a submarine charging directly at him. Flank speed, prepared to ram, but it was too late. At 2,300 yards, Day gave the order. Fire 4 torpedoes. 4 streaks of steel cut across the backwater. Seconds passed, then impact. 2 torpedoes slammed into Hayanami's starboard side near the aft magazine. The explosion was catastrophic. The destroyer's stern was torn completely off. Metal twisted. Fire erupted. The ship rolled violently, nearly 90 degrees, its propellers still spinning in the air before it began to sink. Crew members were thrown into the sea. Others trapped inside as the ship disappeared beneath the surface. Within moments, Hayanami was gone. Commander Kuboki and 147 sailors went down with her. Harder didn't stay to watch. Dive. The submarine slipped beneath the surface immediately. Because Day knew what was coming next. Aircraft. Within minutes, Japanese patrol planes would arrive. Searchlights, bombs, depth charges he had to dismiss. Below the surface, Harder descended quickly. Engine slowed, noise reduced to a minimum. Above them, faint engine sounds began to echo through the water. Aircraft searching, but they were too late again. 2 destroyers, less than 24 hours on. The Imperial Japanese Navy now had a serious problem. Admiral Toyota received the report shortly after sunrise. His reaction was immediate anger, his belief in the nation. He pulled 8 destroyers from escort duty, reassigned them into hunter-killer groups. Their mission, find the submarine, destroy it, no matter the cost. Every destroyer captain received the same order, maximum aggression, no retreat, to kill that submarine. But Commander Day wasn't finished, not even close, because now he understood something the Japanese didn't. They were reacting. He was controlling the fight. And as long as that remained true, he would keep sinking ships. June 8th. Harder moved south toward the Sibutu Passage. A narrow stretch of water between Tawi Tawi and Borneo, a choke point. Japanese destroyers passed through it constantly, which made it perfect. Day wasn't avoiding danger anymore. He was going straight toward it, because every ship that entered that passage was a target. And he intended to prove that even in the most heavily patrolled waters in the Pacific, a submarine could still dominate. 1400 hours. Lookout report. 2 destroyers, moving in formation, speed 25 knots, standard search pattern. One identified as Tanakaze. The second, unknown. Day didn't rush. He studied them, watched their movement, their rhythm. Every 8 minutes they changed course. Predictable, precise. That gave him a window, a small one, but enough. He positioned Harder directly in their path. Then waited. Engine silent, crew motionless. Time passed slowly. Every man knew the next few minutes would decide everything. 1630 hours, the lead destroyer began its turn, heading directly toward Harder's position. Range 3,000 yards, closing. 2,500, 2,015, close 100 yards, fire. 4 torpedoes launched one after another, each spaced perfectly, each aimed with precision. Seconds later, the first torpedo missed, then impact. The second struck near the ridge. The third hit the forward magazine. What followed was devastation. A massive explosion tore through Tanakaze. So powerful that even underwater, Harder's crew felt it like a shockwave through their bones. The destroyer split apart, her bow separated from the hull. Both sections began to sink. Within 3 minutes she was gone, but this time there was no escape window. The second destroyer reacted instantly, turning sharply, charging directly toward Harder's last known position. Depth charges already rolling off her deck. Take her deep. Harder dropped fast, 300 feet. Explosions erupted overhead. The ocean turned violent. Shockwaves slammed into the hull. Metal groaned. Lights flared. Inside, men braced for impact. But the charges were slightly off, close enough. After 40 minutes, the destroyer broke contact. She had lost him. 3 destroyers destroyed in 3 days. For most submarine commanders, that would have been enough, not for Commander Day, because now something bigger was happening. The Japanese weren't just hunting him anymore, they were reacting to the advantage. Admiral Toyota understood the danger, but what he didn't realize yet was how deep the problem went. Every destroyer he pulled into the hunt meant one less escort protecting carriers, supply ships, and convoys, and all of it was happening because of one submarine, USS Harder. June 9th, 0500 hours. Harder rose slowly to periscope depth. The sea was calm, visibility clear, and what they saw next made every man in the conning tower freeze. 4 Japanese destroyers, side by side, moving in a wide formation, actively searching. Their sonar pings were so loud, Harder's crew could hear them through the hull. This wasn't a patrol, this was a kill formation, designed to trap and destroy submarines. Day had 8 torpedoes left. 4 destroyers meant limited chances. One mistake and they wouldn't survive. He studied them carefully. Each ship had a role. The lead destroyer zigzagged aggressively. Difficult target. The second steady course, predictable. That was the weakness. That was the target. 0612 hours. The second destroyer began a turn. And for a brief moment, she moved directly toward Harder's position. Range, 4,000 yards. Closing, 3,500, 2,000 closer. Inside the submarine, no one moved, no one spoke, just waiting. Timing had to be perfect. At 1,800 yards, fire 3 torpedoes. 3 torpedoes launched in quick succession, straight toward the target. Seconds passed, then impact. 1, 2, 3. All 3 torpedoes struck within seconds of each other. The destroyer didn't just take damage, she exploded. A massive blast tore the ship apart, sending debris hundreds of feet into the air. Flame shot skyward. The hull rolled violently, then disappeared beneath the surface, sunk in less than 90 seconds. But this time escape wouldn't be easy. The remaining 3 destroyers reacted instantly, converged on Harder's position. Aggressive, precise, take her deep. Harder plunged downward 300 feet. The pressure increased. The hull creaked under stress. Then the first depth charges hit. Explosions thundered above them. Then more, and more. 23 depth charges in the first 10 minutes. The lights went out. Darkness filled the submarine. Emergency lighting flickered on, dim, unstable. A pipe burst in the forward torpedo room. Water sprayed across the compartment. Men rushed to contain it, all while the attacks continued. Inside Harder, it felt like the ocean itself was trying to crush them. Each explosion sent shockwaves through the hull. Metal groaned, gauges rattled. Every man knew one direct hit, and it was over. But Day didn't panic. He kept the submarine moving slowly, quietly, just enough to avoid detection. Above them, the destroyers continued their assault, pattern after pattern, trying to guess where the submarine would be. But Harder kept slipping away, just out of reach. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2. Finally, the explosion stopped. Silence returned. The destroyers had withdrawn. Carefully, Harder rose back toward periscope depth. Every man waited. If the destroyers were still there, this would be the end. The periscope broke the surface. Day looked. Nothing, no ships, no movement. They were gone. 4 destroyers, 4 days. And Harder was still alive, but Day wasn't thinking about victory. He was thinking about fuel. The submarine had burned through 60% of its reserves. They had maybe 3 days left before they had to withdraw. The mission was nearing its end, but the impact was just beginning. Far away at Tawi Tawi anchorage, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa received the reports. 4 destroyers lost. Same submarine, same area. He did the math quickly. If a single American submarine could break through their defenses this easily, then the entire fleet was at risk. Battleships, carriers, everything. He sent an urgent message to Admiral Toyota. The fleet needed to move immediately. No delays, no waiting. This was not part of the plan. Operation A-Go required precise timing. The fleet was supposed to depart on June 15th. 6 days later, that time was critical for reconnaissance, for coordination, for preparation. Leaving early meant chaos, unprepared carriers, disorganized escorts, incomplete supply lines, a weakened formation. But staying was worse, because somewhere beneath the water was USS Harder, and its commander had already proven he could reach them. Admiral Toyota made the decision. The fleet would leave early, June 10th, 0800 hours. The Japanese mobile fleet departed Tawi Tawi. 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 24 destroyers, all moving north toward the Philippine Sea. American code breakers intercepted the movement within hours. Admiral Raymond Spruance adjusted his plans immediately. The early departure gave the Americans time to prepare, time to position, time to strike first, all because of one submarine. Back at sea, Commander Day knew none of this. He didn't know he had just altered the course of an entire naval campaign. He only knew one thing: he still had torpedoes left, and there were still targets out there. June 10th, 1630 hours. 2 more destroyers appeared north of Cebu. 2 pass alert, searching aggressively. They had 5 torpedoes remaining, enough for 1 more attack, maybe 2. He moved into position carefully, quietly, waiting for the right moment. 1715 hours. Range closed, target aligned. Fire 3 torpedoes. 3 torpedoes surged forward. Seconds later, impact. 1 hit near the bow. The destroyer slowed, damaged but not sinking. Then the second destroyer reacted, charging straight toward Harder fast. 32 knots, closing rapidly. Day made a split-second decision, fire remaining torpedoes. 2 torpedoes launch, both missed. Now Harder had no torpedoes, left no weapons, no way to fight back. In a destroyer bearing down on them at full speed, emergency deep. Harder angled downward sharply, 300 feet. The destroyer passed directly overhead. His propellers thundered through the water so loud it felt like they were inside the submarine. Then silence for a moment. Then the hunt began again. The destroyer circled back, preparing for attack runs, dropping depth charges pattern after pattern. Harder was defenseless, no counterattack, no escape, only survival. The first pattern dropped at 1723. 6 depth charges, close. The submarine rolled violently. Men struggled to stay on their feet. A second pattern followed, closer, stronger. The stern lifted, then slammed down hard. Damage reports came in quickly. Leaks, cracks, minor failures, nothing critical yet. The hunt continued for 90 minutes. 42 depth charges, most too far, some dangerously close. 3 close enough to cause real damage. But still Harder survived. At 1900 hours, the destroyer withdrew out of depth charges, out of options. Inside the submarine, silent exhaustion. They had survived, but this time it was different. They had nothing left to fight with. No torpedoes, limited fuel, and a journey home. Commander Day made the call. It was time to leave. USS Harder turned south, heading for Fremantle, damaged, low on fuel, but alive. After one of the most aggressive and successful submarine patrols in naval history, USS Harder reached Fremantle on June 26, 1944. 17 exhausting days at sea, 5 destroyers engaged, 4 destroyed, 1 damaged. It was unlike anything the submarine force had ever seen before. As Harder pulled into port, there was no celebration waiting. Only one man, Admiral Charles Lockwood. He had already read the reports, intercepted the signals, studied every move. Still, he wanted to hear it from the man who did. He looked at Commander Day and asked quietly, "Can you do it again?" Day didn't even pause. "Give me torpedoes and I'll sink 10. The crew spent weeks repairing the submarine. Hull damage, patched, systems restored, engines tuned, torpedoes reloaded, fuel tanks filled. But the most important work wasn't mechanical, it was tactical. Day trained his crew harder than ever. Every drill, every maneuver, every second counted, because now they weren't just surviving anymore, they were hunting. Across the Pacific, other submarine commanders began studying Harder's patrol reports. Something had changed. The old doctrine, run, hide, survive, was being replaced. Attack first, attack hard, attack without hesitation. By early August, the transformation had begun. Submarines were no longer just predators of merchant ships. They were now a direct threat to warships, even destroyers. August 5, 1944. USS Harder departed Fremantle. Once again, 6th War Patrol. This time she wasn't alone. She was part of a coordinated wolfpack. USS Hake, USS Harder. 3 submarines. 1 mission, intercept Japanese shipping west of Luzon, destroy everything inside. The operation started with precision. August 21st. A large convoy was detected off Palawan Bay. 16 ships, heavy cargo, critical supplies. The wolfpack moved into position, spread out, silent wing, then attack. Torpedoes launched from multiple directions. Chaos erupted across the convoy. Explosions lit up the night. Ships burned. Cargo vessels broke apart. By the end of the attack, 4 ships were gone. More than 22,000 tons destroyed. The next day, August 22nd, 3 coastal defense vessels were spotted near Bataan. Harder and Hato moved in quickly, no hesitation, no delay. Torpedoes fired, direct hits. All 3 ships were sunk within minutes. Harder was credited with 2 kills. Everything was going perfectly, too perfectly. August 23rd, USS Hato ran out of torpedoes. Her mission was over. She turned away, heading back. Now only 2 submarines remained, Harder and Hake. They continued operating near Dassel Bay, still hunting, still searching. But this time, they weren't the only hunters. Japanese intelligence had been watching, listening, tracking. Radio transmissions had been intercepted. Movement patterns analyzed. They didn't know the exact position, but they knew enough, and that was all they needed. August 24th, 04:53 hours. USS Hake was submerged. Watching through her periscope, 4 miles away, Harder was on the surface, preparing for another attack. The sea was calm. The situation looked routine. Until Hake's sonar operator heard it, a sound that changed everything. Echo ranging, active sonar, close and getting closer. 2 Japanese escort ships, CD-22, and patrol vessel PB-102, moving together. Speed 18 knots. Search pattern aggressive. They had been hunting for days. Now they had a target. Hake's captain reacted instantly. Take her deep. The submarine slipped into darkness. Silent and safe for now, but Harder was still exposed. At 05:20 hours, Hake attempted to send a warning, a short transmission. Urgent, critical. No reply. Either Harder didn't receive it, or she didn't have time to respond. At 05:30, everything happened at once. Harder crash-dived. Emergency descent. Full speed now. No time for careful control. The submarine angled sharply 35 degrees downward. Engine still running. On the surface, a massive trail of bubbles marked her path. Perfect signal, perfect target. CD-22 sonar operator locked on immediately. Clear contact. Strong echo. Range 1,200 yard. Depth increasing. The Japanese captain didn't hesitate. Attack. 0547 hours. First depth charge pattern deployed. Set for 250 feet. Dropped directly over Harder's position. Seconds later, detonation. The explosions were devastating. Precise, controlled, deadly. Inside Harder, the impact was immediate. Island unforgiving. The hull shook under the force. Then aircraft deep within the structure, near the after torpedo room. Water began flooding and fast, unstoppable. Within seconds, the situation turned critical. Within 90 seconds, the stern compartments were gone. filled completely with seawater. The submarine tilted sharply. The stern dragged downward. The bow lifted upward. Control was slipped away. Commander Day reacted instantly. Blow all ballast. Emergency surface. Compressed air roared through the system, trying to force the submarine upward, trying to fight gravity, trying to save the ship, but it wasn't enough. Too much water, too much damage, too fast. Harder didn't rise. 0552 hours. Second depth charge pattern, even closer, even more accurate. The explosion shattered what remained of the submarine's strength. The hull ruptured in multiple places. Water flooded in from every direction. Control room was hit. Power failed. Lights went out. Complete darkness. The submarine continued to fall 500 feet. Beyond safe limits. Beyond survival. Inside there were no more options. No more actions. Only seconds remained. The pressure outside increased beyond what the hull could endure. Steel began to and then collapse. Bulkheads crushed inward. Compartments imploded one after another. In less than 3 minutes, USS Harder ceased to exist. 79 men gone, without a single survivor. At 600 hours, CD-22 and PP-102 reported a successful kill. Oil spread across the surface. Debris floated silently in the water. But fragments of metal, pieces of insulation. There were no bodies, no survivors. Only proof that USS Harder was gone. For 2 hours, the Japanese ships circled the area, dropping additional depth charges, making sure nothing remained. They were thorough, because they knew exactly what they had destroyed. Not just a submarine, but a threat that had shaken their entire fleet. Nearby, USS Hake remained submerged, silent, listening, waiting, but there was nothing left to air, no engines, no signals, no movement. That night, Hake surfaced and sent a message. Short, final. USS Harder lost. The report reached Admiral Charles Lockwood on August 25th. He understood immediately. One of his best commanders gone. One of his most effective submarines destroyed. He didn't hesitate. All submarine operations in the area were suspended. Every vessel was ordered to withdraw. The risk was too high. The enemy had adapted. In the United States, the Navy released a brief statement. USS Harder was missing, presumed lost with all hands. No details, no explanation, because the real story was still classified. But the Japanese knew. Admiral Toyota received confirmation shortly after. The submarine that had terrorized his destroyer fleet was finally gone. He issued a commendation for the crews involved. What he didn't realize was how much damage had already been done. Just days earlier, Commander Day had forced a critical one that would ripple across the entire Pacific War. The Battle of the Philippine Sea began on June 19, 1944, 9 days after Harder sank her fourth destroyer. The Japanese fleet entered the battle early, unprepared, disorganized, rushed into action before they were ready. Why? Because Tawi Tawi had become too dangerous, because a single submarine had proven nowhere was safe. The fleet had been scheduled to depart on June 15th. That time was essential for reconnaissance, for coordination, for planning, but they left 6 days early, and that mistake cost them everything. When the battle began, American forces were ready, organized. The Japanese were not. Aircraft launched in waves, fighter cover failed, coordination broke down. In just 2 days, the Imperial Japanese Navy suffered devastating losses. Carriers destroyed, aircraft wiped out, elite pilots lost forever. American pilots called it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot because the outcome was so one-sided. But behind that victory was something invisible. USS Harder. Commander Day never saw the result. He never knew that his actions had helped shape one of the most decisive naval victories of World War II. But others did. Admiral Lockwood later described Harder's patrol as one of the most strategically important submarine operations of the entire war, because it proved something revolutionary. Submarines didn't have to run. They could fight and win. Before Harder, submarine doctrine focused on survive, destroy, stay hidden, escape at all costs. After Harder, everything changed. Submarines became aggressive. They hunted warships. They took risks. They dictated the fight. The down-the-throat tactic spread quickly. A bold move, a dangerous move, but incredibly effective. It worked because it broke expectations. Destroyer captains expected submarines to flee. When they didn't, even a moment of hesitation was fatal. By late 1944, Japanese forces began adapting. They improved tactics, they changed formations, they became more cautious. Submarine losses increased, but so did their impact. The balance of naval warfare had shifted permanently. On March 27, 1946, Commander Day was awarded the Medal of Honor, presented to his will for extraordinary bravery, for unmatched leadership, for changing the nature of submarine warfare. USS Harder received multiple honors, Presidential Unit Citation, Battle Stars, recognition across the fleet, but her real legacy was not medals, it was impact. On May 22, 80 years after her sinking, USS Harder was finally found, resting deep beneath the ocean, silent, undisturbed. She lies upright on the seafloor. A final resting place, a protected war grave, no salvage allowed, no disturbance permitted, because inside are the remains of 79 men who gave everything. Today their story is still told in naval academies and history lessons, in the memories of those who refused to forget. They weren't just sailors, they were pioneers. They changed how war was fought beneath the sea. They chose to attack when they were expected to run. They chose courage over safety, and in doing so, they changed history. Commander Samuel Day now rests among heroes, but his legacy lives far beyond a single grave. Every year, families gather to remember, to honor, to keep the story alive, because stories like this matter, not just for history, but for understanding sacrifice, courage, and the cost of war. The last surviving crew member passed away in 2022. No one remains who served aboard USS Harder, but their voices echo through history, and now you've heard their story. If it meant something to you, don't let it fade. Remember it, share it, keep it alive. because history is not just about the past, it's about the people who refuse to be forgotten.